then there's no break. Now, normally, if you look in a Sefer Torah, if you look at the print in a Sefer Torah, between parshas, there's a gap. There's a gap. There's a white space of where letters would normally be, and there's a gap. Between Parshas Vayigash and Parshas Vayechi, there's no gap. There's no gap. And that's why the first Rashi, if you look at the right column, top line, says, Lama Parsha Zu Stuma. Why is this Parsha closed off? Meaning that there's no indication that it's a new Parsha. There's no space in the Torah that indicates it's a new Parsha. So Rashi here says, because when Yakov Avinu died, so then the Jewish people started suffering. They got their minds became clogged up from the suffering, the enslavement of Egypt. Now the truth is that it didn't really start yet, because it didn't start till after Yosef died, which is about 56 years later. But when Yaakov dies, anything that could prevent it has gone. That means Yaakov is the last possible hope that's going to prevent some sort of being subjugated by the Egyptians. So that's what Rashi says. But the other Mefarshim say, you see, up until this point, we're going to see Yaakov's life was one long string of aggravation. He was chased by Esav, and he's chased by, he suffers by Lavan, and his wives are said that Lavan pulls a switch, and then Rachel dies, and then Dinah is violated, and then Yosef is sold. It's one long string of aggravation. Finally, he has, from the time he comes to Egypt, 17 years. 17 good years. Those are the years that he's in Egypt. Yosef is alive. The tribes are there. And what's interesting is you look at the first word, Vayechi. Look at the word, Vayechi Yakov be'eretz Mitzrayim shvayis shana. He lives in Mitzrayim 17 years. Now the word Vayechi, the numerical value of the word Vayechi, let's take each letter. Vav is 6. Yud is 10. How much are we at? 16. Wow, without a calculator. Ches is 8. What are we at? 24. And then last Yud is? 34. Okay, so it's 34 years of life for Yaakov Avinu. Now, not coincidentally, how old was Yosef when he was sold? 17. How many years did he live with Yosef in Mitzrayim now? 17. 17 and 17? 34. Vayechi Yaakov, the years of good life that he had were 34. The 34 years, right there in the word Vayechi. Because it's 17 and 17 of Yosef on both ends. The question is, why does the Torah not make a break before this Parsha? And the answer is that it's an indication. When is the main growth for a person, a Torah Jew? When do you grow the most? Right? When do you really grow? A person grows through adversity. We don't want adversity. We're not looking for adversity. But a person grows through it. And adversity, by the way, doesn't have to be something really nasty that happens. Adversity could simply be fighting against our character traits. If I'm a selfish person and I have to train myself to be a giving person, that hurts. Anytime you got to sacrifice something, it hurts. Anytime you got to give up something, it hurts. If I'm a person with an ego and I have to set aside my ego, or if I have some desire to eat non-kosher food and I have to fight against not eating non-kosher food, that hurts. It's painful when you fight against a desire. It's painful. That's when we grow. When it's easy, when it's smooth, the person doesn't grow as much. So the Torah is indicating, there's nothing new right now. The lack of a gap between the two parshas is for Yaakov's life. The main growth took place already. Growing through adversity took place. Do you know that? I'll tell you an incredible idea from the Sfas Emes. He says, when the ultimate mitzvah is to give up your life on Kiddush Hashem. The ultimate mitzvah is for a Jew to die when and not violate one of the three cardinal sins. If an anti-Semite pulls a gun and says worship idols or kill somebody or commit an act of immorality, he has to give up his life and not commit the Avera. That's called to die al Kiddush Hashem. That's the ultimate act of sacrifice. So the Sfas Emes says, when, let's say you have a desire, you're on an airplane and they forgot your kosher meal. And they serve something that looks like and it happens periodically, like a lot. And they're serving, everybody else is eating their food, their non-kosher food, and you have an apple and a banana that they managed to find somewhere. And now you have a desire and you overcome the desire to eat. Whenever you overcome a desire, it feels like your part of your life is being cut away. Let's say if you don't want it that dramatic, so let's say it's page 268. Let's say you've eaten 2 pieces of lemon meringue pie. You want to have a third, and you decide, you know what, I'm going to turn on the old self-control switch. I'm not going to have that 3rd piece of lemon meringue pie. And you resist simply because you feel, I really should try to get a little control over here. All right, we're into science fiction now, but let's say you actually do that. At that moment that you overcome a desire, it hurts. It hurts. It feels like somebody's killing me. At least part of me is dying. The Sfas Emes says, at the moment that you overcome a desire, it's as if you have died al Kiddush Hashem. How do you like that? How do you like that? That means you have an opportunity every day when you get to that point where you realize, there's what I need and there's what I want and there's what I crave. They're different levels. I need 1 piece of schnitzel. That usually should be good. I want a 2nd piece, and at my level, it's acceptable. The 4th or 5th one I should have gotten be able to put on the brakes before that. And if I don't put on the brakes, I'm out of control. If I do put on the brakes, it hurts. Anytime we put on the brakes, it hurts. Whether it's on our ego, whether it's selfishness, whether it's physical desire. At that moment, it's as if a person is dying al Kiddush Hashem. That's what the Sfas Emes says. A person could die 1,000 deaths every day. We don't want to, but that's when we grow. That's the main growth. When things are going well, and everything is going well, and you're able to pay the bills, and you're getting paid your regular monthly salary. We're into science fiction here again, and your kids are doing well in school, and your wife is in a good mood, and your mother-in-law just left, and everything is going well. At that point, it's easy to serve Hashem. But how do you feel when you get up in the morning? You get a bit of a headache, and you can't pay the bills, and something's there that you just got a call from the principal yet again. And this time it was something that happened some incident with the noodles, right? And then you got to go to shul and daven. You got to go, and all you're thinking of is when you do like this, you're thinking that there are a few other people you'd like to be doing that to. That's what. By the way, just parenthetically, when you clap, nobody needs to hear it. It doesn't have to be a thump. Right? You're not trying to start. It doesn't. Nobody should hear you when it claps. Sometimes I hear people banging on their chest in shul. Sounds like boy oh boy, something banging up like a bong. Doing. Nobody has to hear. You can even do like this. Dunk, dunk, dunk. Right? All we're trying to say is that it's my heart that's getting me in trouble. It's not a question of starting a sudden chas v'shalom, putting the heart into sudden shock, which could happen, by the way. I remember the little kid. There's a baseball game. There's what do you call it? Little league. So some kid got hit by a pitch right on the chest, right in the heart. He died because it's dangerous to hit the heart hard, right? You don't have to do that. That's parenthetical, yeah.
Is it not easy to delve into Hashem when things are bad? Because then you don't take things for granted.
Sometimes when things are bad, you're right. Sometimes when a person is in a state of distress, then that brings out something else in prayer. But there's that middle stage where you're not in terrible distress. You're just ticked off about a lot of things in life. And the last thing you want to think about is prayer, because there are a few people whose necks you want to wring, and then it's a little more difficult. And by the way, that does say it's important you ring up, because it says you should daven for the problem not to happen before the problem happens. So a person should daven to stay healthy before their health deteriorates. Because when you're davening in a state of health, that davening, you're not as desperate. Anybody davens when they're desperate. So it's a lower level davening. You should daven that you should find a wife before the search begins. Because once the search begins, then you're desperate. You should daven for finances before things become tight. Because then you're davening from a position of strength. You understand, at that point, we're going to talk about davening in a second. At that point, I don't really need God as much. I certainly don't feel that I need him because everything's going well. That shows that you really have that faith in God. When a person's what they say, there's no atheists in a foxhole with their bullets whizzing by, so you got no choice. Of course you're going to daven. And therefore, one should daven. The Gemara says, daven before the trouble starts. Daven that the trouble shouldn't start. Number 3. You'll notice a similar, in this Parsha, what's the name of the Parsha? Vayechi. And what happens in this Parsha? Yakov dies. Isn't that strange? He lives, dies. The Parsha where he dies is called Vayechi. And the Parsha where Sarah Imenu dies, what's it called? Chai Sarah, the life of Sarah. That's very strange. The Dafka, the Parsha where they die, is the one that's called I would call it the death. Right? The death of Sarah. Why does it say Chai Sarah and says it's Parsha of Vayechi? Never noticed that? And is that one of the little curious Jewish paradoxes? What's the answer? The answer is that when a person dies and he's lived his life with meaning, so it's called the life. If a person dies in his life, they lived a life without meaning. Like had a guy in a kibbutz in Israel who actually he was known in the area. He was the baker on a secular kibbutz, and he had a great recipe for some sort of apple cinnamon cake. And on his tombstone, he had them write the recipe on his tombstone for this apple cinnamon cake. And people would come to the grave from all over, with a pen and paper. What was that too? That's not the most productive life. It's great if people enjoy your apple cinnamon cake, but there's more to life. They used to have a falafel shop in Israel. I don't know if they still do. It's called Melech HaFalafel, or the king of falafels. And I remember seeing it. They had good falafel too, by the way. But I remember seeing it and thinking to myself, I don't know how impressed they are in heaven. What did you do after for your entire life? I was a king. And no king. The king, wow. Which country? Well, it was somewhere on King George Street. Yeah, which country? Falafel. The king of falafel. But we had great trina. We had great trina, get as many French fries as you want. So I have nothing against people making a parnasa. You want him sell falafel. But that can't be your life, that you're the king of falafel. So it says, Vayechi Yakov, that Yaakov's life is called a life. Now, Vayehi Yemei Yakov. Now watch this, because this also seems like a redundancy. Look at the first top line. Vayehi Yemei Yakov, the days of Yakov, Shnei Chayav, the years of his life, Sheva Shanim V'Arboim U'Me'as Shana, 7 and 40 and 100 years. So there seems to be a redundancy, because it says the days of Yakov, the years of his life. If I was writing, I would just written the years of his life were 147 years. What's the days got to do with it? Why did it say Vayehi Yemei Yakov, the days of Yaakov Shnei Chayav? What does that mean? What's that teaching us? Anybody got an idea? What's that teaching us? To me. What's that teaching us? Boy, do I wish there was something in there to make a toast on. What's that teaching us? You may...
Every day he was trying to...
Excellent. That means sometimes we make a mistake and we think, oh, well, I got off to a bad start today. Today's a wasted day. We'll try it again tomorrow. It's a big mistake. And what happens is one day goes after another. It's only a day. It's only a day. We'll waste today. We'll waste tomorrow. That's not. Life is made up of individual days. The days create the years. It's not a person, you look back on certain people who achieved something in life. You look at the Gedolei Ador, you look at the people who became big Torah Talmidei Chachamim, and you look back, you just see like one big package at the end of the day. Reb Moshe Feinstein didn't become a package at the end of the day. The Chafetz Chaim didn't become a package at the end of the day. Every single day of his life was it's a new day, and it's a new challenge. And then when you look back, the days start to accumulate. So, people say that life goes fast. It goes fast when you look back. When you're going through it, it doesn't go so fast, especially when you're stuck in traffic. Then it's not going so fast. And all of a sudden you look back and you say, hey, where did all those years go? So a person looks back, a person wants to be able to look back and see that there was some sort of accomplishment. That accomplishment is from the day to day, the hour to hour, the minute to minute. And a person never gets to the point, there's no such thing for a Torah Jew as, okay, I got to kill an hour now. You get to the airport, they got an hour till your flight. Let's kill an hour. Killing an hour is like killing yourself. You can't kill an hour. Do something. There's always something to do. There's always a sefer to open. There's always a ches to somebody to help. There's always something to do. The Torah is emphasizing that it's an accumulation of the days. Okay. So Vayikruvu, third line. Vayikruvu Yemei Yisrael Lamus. It was kind of close to Yakov to die. Some of the Farshim say that he sensed it. Some say that he felt it, that he's actually physically he felt he's getting close to dying. Vayikra livno li Yosef vayomer lo, im no motzasi chen beinecha, if I find favor in your eyes, simna yodcha tachas yurechi, put your hand under my thigh, ve'asisa imodi chesed ve'emes, do a kindness and truth with me, al nasik b'reidu b'mitzrayim, do not bury me in Egypt. Now, there are three concepts here in this pasuk. First of all, what's the idea of putting a hand under a thigh? Where else did we find this, by the way, in the Torah? Where do we find a hand under a thigh? Where? Avram, who put the hand under the thigh? Good. And when Avram wants him to swear, he puts a hand under the thigh. The most basic idea of the hand under the thigh is, even nowadays when you go to court, so first of all, a Torah Jew, you're allowed to decline swearing in court. You're allowed to affirm. You know, when you're in court, you can say, I don't swear religiously, so I don't swear, but I will affirm it. Right? Swearing, you could affirm it. Here, that's what we call affirmative action. Right? You affirm it. So not really, but I don't remember what affirmative action is. I think affirmative action just means that it's hard for Jewish guys to get into medical school. I think that's what happens. That's what affirmative action does. But you could affirm. Isn't that what happens? Right? So now they're reversing that. Right, right, exactly. That was always the problem. You're allowing them, but now you're not allowing us. You know, it works against somebody. So now they're doing it straight out, and all the medical schools once again will be dominated by guys named Goldstein. So that's what's going to happen. Listen, if you're qualified, you're qualified. But at the end of the day, you're allowed. When they do swear, you swear on a holy object. In Beis Din, used to swear on a Sefer Torah, on a pair of tefillin. Because obviously when you're holding a Sefer Torah, it does something to you. If you've ever been the guy in shul holding a Sefer Torah, and somebody comes up to you to tell you at that point, tell you an off-color joke, you'll probably, not now. The Sefer Torah kind of sobers you. It's a sobering to hold a Sefer Torah. So the idea is that if you're going to swear and you're going to invoke God's name, you want to be in a certain frame of mind where you're taking God's name very seriously. In those days, they did not have a Sefer Torah. The only object of holiness that they had was the bris milah, the circumcision. So the hand was put under the thigh in the area near the bris milah, not on the bris milah, as a sign of the severity of what he's about to do. So the hand is put under the thigh. That's what the swearing is. Put the hand under the thigh, number one. Number two, it represents, especially by Yakov and Eliezer, by Avram Avinu and Eliezer, and also here where Yakov is on his, he's already old and frail. It symbolizes my life is in your hands. The thigh means I am in your hands. I remember that commercial they used to have that he's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world. I remember that one that he's holding a globe, I think, or something like that. That's what it symbolizes. Yaakov Avinu is in Yosef's hands. And I'm making a request. I can't do it, especially here. Avram Avinu asked Eliezer to go get a shidduch for Yitzchak. And I can't go because I'm also old. I can't travel. I need you to do it. Here, what's Yaakov asking Yosef to do? Don't bury me in Egypt. Don't bury me in Egypt. When a person dies, he's certainly in other people's hands. He's certainly nothing that he could do about it. Now, why doesn't Yaakov want to be buried in Egypt? Several reasons. Number one, Yaakov felt that they may make him into a deity. If he's buried in Egypt, when Yaakov Avinu arrived, the famine was supposed to go on for another 5 years. The famine stopped. As soon as Yaakov Avinu arrived, the famine in Egypt stopped. It only lasted for 2 years. So the Egyptians saw him as a holy man, and he was worried if he'll be buried in Egypt, then they'll turn him into a deity and they'll come and worship. Number one. Number two, he didn't want to have to go through. There's a concept that if you're buried in Eretz Yisrael, so at the resurrection of the dead, you get right up. For somebody who's buried in Eretz Yisrael, when the Tchiyas HaMesim at the resurrection of the dead, you go, now what happens to people in Chutz La'aretz? What happens to people who are not buried in Eretz Yisrael? So there's something called Gilgul Mechilos. Tunnels are made. I remember hearing about this in second grade. Boy, was I spooked. There are tunnels, and the person will then roll till Eretz Yisrael. I'm picturing people rolling to Eretz Yisrael. It's a long roll. And they're gonna roll to Eretz Yisrael. I think for tzaddikim it'll be why they'll be able to walk to Eretz Yisrael. What's his name, Musk? But doesn't he want to make like a tunnel under the Atlantic Ocean from England to New York? Good luck. So listen,
You can maybe do it.
you never know, but this I think we know. Yeah, sometimes you never know. This I think we know. He also wants to send people to Mars. He wants to have a habitation on Mars. He's got his Mars back because we've got everything worked out on Earth. See, everything Earth is good. Now we can worry about Mars. Half the people in the world can't find enough food. The other half can't afford food. But let's go to Mars. Maybe that'll be good. So so they want to make. So they had what's called Yakov doesn't want to have to go through. Am I the only one who's normal, or am I nuts? Yeah, it's one or the other. The two of us can't be on the same planet and both be sane. By the way, do you know that there's an organization called Arachim? And the head, the CEO of Arachim, it's one of the outreach organizations in Eretz Yisrael. The CEO of Arachim was a secular Israeli. And he was living he had grown up with a story that he was told. He was secular. He was told his grandfather, who was a religious rabbi in Europe, was in one of the concentration camps. And shortly before the end of the war, the Russians were already coming. By the end of the war, at one point, the German commandant took him out in front of the entire camp. And he said, "Jew, there's a piece of pork. I want you to eat this pork." And he said, "No, I'm not going to eat the pork. There's sometimes you have to give up your life if it's in public, even not the three cardinal sins." He said, "I'm not going to eat the pork." He was a rabbi. He didn't want to discourage it. So the German said to him, "See the dust out in the distance?" He looks out. He says, "That's the dust of the Russian tanks. They're going to be here in a matter of hours. If you eat the pork, you'll live to see it. If you don't eat the pork, you'll die." He says, "I'm not eating the pork." He took out a gun and he killed him on the spot. Okay, that was a story that this secular Israeli grew up with. Eventually he went to America, he fulfilled the Israeli dream and he moved to America. And he was involved in the arms trade, made a lot of money. He moved back to Eretz Yisrael. One day his wife calls him up at the office. She says, "Listen, I didn't make supper, pick up something on the way home for the family." So he stops off at this non-kosher restaurant where he wants to buy pork sandwiches for his family. And he's standing in line and he's thinking to himself, all of a sudden the story with his grandfather, remember that he said, "Now one of us has got to be crazy. Either he's crazy that he died not to eat the stuff, or I'm crazy that we are eating the stuff. We can't be, we're both normal and living in the same world." And as a result of that, he started investigating and he himself became a Baal Tshuva. Now he's the CEO of the Arachim organization. So, that's why I say, I know I'm rambling, but it can't be that we're both normal. Either Musk is normal or I'm normal. We can't be, either it's going to happen or it's not. The odds are, I'll bet his money that it's not going to happen. I'll put down the 400 billion right now, right, that it's not going to happen. Okay, so Yaakov Avinu does not want to go through that suffering of having to roll to Eretz Yisrael, so he wants to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. And number 3, he calls it a chesed ve'emes. Do a kindness, let's call it a kindness of truth. Why is burying the dead called chesed shel emes? And not only that, the burial societies are often called the chesed shel emes society. Why is that called the chesed shel emes?
Because it's only true chesed.
Why is it the only true chesed?
Because the person is gone, they can't give you anything back.
Correct. That means that it's the only time that you don't expect to be repaid by the person you're doing chesed for. There are times in life where you do a chesed, and you help somebody out, and you're thinking, maybe one day there will be some payback, and often there is. That a person sees he owes you one, then he sees you standing on the street, so he stops and gives you a ride in his car because you once did him a favor, you lent him some money, whatever it was that you did. A chesed shalem is when you help bury the dead. Then you may get rewarded by God. You will get rewarded by God. But the person himself is never going to pay you back. That's why it's called a chesed shel emes. It's a true chesed where there's no focus, there's no thought of any sort of repayment. So Yaakov tells him to swear, and Yosef swears. Okay. Then starts a very dramatic episode in the Torah. By the way, there was a guy in America who... there was a kollel guy was driving and he saw a limousine broken with a flat tire at the side of the road. So he sees the limousine driver's trying to fix the flat tire, so he stops and he helps the guy out, helps him fix the flat tire. Then the guy asked him his name, and he gave him his name. He couldn't see what was going on in the limousine with the smoked windows, but he gives him his name. The next day, a truck pulls up outside his house. They bring in a big bouquet of flowers and a little envelope with a note. He opens up the note. He says, "Thank you very much for the help on the highway yesterday. I've taken the liberty to pay off your mortgage. Sincerely, Donald Trump."
Good, yeah.
How do you like that? Before he was president. Before he was president. I've been told this story by several people. I can't confirm that it's true.
I told you this.
But, huh?
I told you the story.
You told me the story?
Yeah,
How long ago?
Like 2 months ago, 2 months ago.
No, okay. So I heard it in a previous life also. So the what do you call it? But apparently the story's true. You may have read it in my book, right? Which I probably wrote because I heard it from you. But at the end of the day, that is the story. Now I don't know if it's true. I'm assuming it's true. It's something that he would have done. But one thing, where did you hear it?
I think on a podcast maybe.
That was me. So it could be. Whatever the case is, one thing is for sure. If you ever see somebody with a flat tire at the side of the road, stop to help them, especially if it's a limousine. Because there the chances are even better. But there's always not that that's why we do it, that's why we do it, but there is always that possibility of repayment. By somebody who's deceased, there's no possibility of repayment. Okay. So then they tell Yosef that his father is sick, and Yosef comes with his 2 sons, Ephraim and Menashe and Ephraim. Now, skip down to Pasuk Zayin. He tells Yosef that Menashe and Ephraim are now going to be upgraded. Menashe and Ephraim, who are Yosef's sons, are going to be upgraded to tribe status. They are now going to be considered like Reuven and Shimon. They're going to have tribe status. Number one. One of the reasons the Mefarshim say is because Rachel Imenu has 2 children. And Rachel Imenu has 2 children, which is the same amount as Bilhah and Zilpah, who are the maidservants. This is a way of promoting Rachel by now giving her 3 tribes. Now she's going to have Binyamin. Yosef is taken out, and Yosef divides into 2, Ephraim and Menashe. So now she will have 3 tribes. Then Yaakov Avinu does the following. Take a look at Pasuk Zayin. It's 7 lines from the top, 8 lines from the top. So he's telling Yosef, I'm going to give your brothers, your sons, this extra ranking. Then he says, 8 lines from the top, Pasuk Zayin. Va'ani bevoi mi Padan mesa alai Rachel. When I was on my way back from Padan, Rachel died, be'eretz Kenan, baderech be'od kivras eretz lavo Ephrasa. She died along the way before we got to a place called Ephrat. Va'ekbaresham bederech Ephras. I buried her along the path, he Beis Lachem. Right along the way. I didn't even bring her into the town. I want you to see Rashi for a second. Very important life lesson. It's the right column of Rashi, 5 lines from the bottom. If you see it, please show the person next to you. Vani bevoi mi Padan. So Rashi says like this, Ve'afal pi, even though Shani matriach alecha lo licheni likaver be'eretz Canaan, even though I am troubling you to bring me and bury me in the land of Canaan, which is quite a distance from Egypt, Velo kacha sisi le'imecha, I didn't do that to your mother. Sha'arei mesa samuch leBeis Lechem. She died close to Beis Lechem. And I didn't even bring her in. I didn't even bring her into the town. I buried her off on the side of the road. And then Rashi goes on to say, Yakov says to Yosef, and I know that you're wondering about it, and you've got like bearing at least a minor grudge against me for it. I want you to know that wasn't the word of Hashem. Hashem instructed me to bury her there because in the future, when the Jewish people are let out into exile, Rachel Imenu will come out on the road, her spirit obviously, and she'll daven for the Jewish people. And therefore I was told by Hashem to bury her over there. That's what the Torah, okay. The question becomes, why is Yaakov saying that now? Why is Yaakov saying that now? Why is he telling this to Yosef right now? And I heard Rabbi Soloveitchik was one of the from the famous Soloveitchik family. He said like this: when you're a parent, you have children. Children watch your behavior. Children see everything you do. Every day they see and notice everything. A lot of things that we think they don't notice, they notice. They notice everything. They have a sense of what's going on in the home. They see everything. As a parent, do you have to explain what you do to your children? What do you say? Should you explain your behavior to your children?
Depends what age.
Not when they're young. No.
Yeah.
Not when they're young?
Not when they're like 4 or 5, they won't understand.
Never for a friend. Okay.
I'm not
When,
to explain the way they understand, but some things may be hard to explain.
that's true. Certain things are hard to explain. Some things they're not ready to understand yet. Certain things they can't understand. Let's say they're a little older. Let's say they're getting older and they're starting to asking you, why did you go here, or why do you only take mommy to the movie? You don't take us as often as you take mommy. Something like that. You can either explain or not explain. Sometimes some do, some don't. There are different opinions. Whether sometimes people want. There is a school of thought that says, listen, the kid will learn that I'm the authority because he sees I don't have to explain. And if I say to the kid, listen, I'm the father, that's what I do. You don't have to understand it. You just have to do what I tell you. There is a school of thought like that. I don't say you should or shouldn't. I'm just telling you there is such an approach. There's one time in life you must explain to kids. They must explain. That's where your behavior contradicts what you're telling them. So for example, if you tell your kids you can't have a smartphone, it's not good for you to have a smartphone. How come daddy has a smartphone? Well, they see you have a smartphone. And you don't want your kids with a smartphone because there's all sorts of schmutz on there. But daddy has one, so then you have to explain to them, because I need it for work, and I have it filtered exactly according to the way the Rabbanim have said, and it's not used for anything else other than work, then halachically it's permissible. Just make sure the kids don't see you kitzeling around on it at home. You're playing some game on the smartphone. That doesn't look like the Rabbanim okayed it for that. You told us that you only have it for work. That doesn't look like work over there. What I don't know what you could get on there. What kind of, what's that game we were talking about the other day? The Fortnite? Can you get that on a smartphone too? Oh, Baruch Hashem. I thought, So kids sees you on Fortnite. That doesn't look like the Rabbanim, regular Rabbanim okayed it, right? Again, you get it on the smartphone. Oh, terrific. That's marvelous. And or if you tell your kid, you shouldn't drink alcohol. You tell your teenager alcohol is not good for you. Yeah, alcohol is not good for you. Then they see you, when you have guests at the house or you're entertaining, or they see you on Shabbos and you're in the Kiddush club, and you're putting it down like a fish out of water. I thought alcohol is not good for you, or don't smoke. Smoking's not good for you. And the father himself smokes. Not good for you. No, for me it's okay. My lungs are older and stronger. For you it's not good. There, if you're contradicting yourself, you have to explain it to your kids. That you have to explain a self-contradiction. Yeah.
Well, the smoking and the drinking example, there's a lot of people I've heard of who have they won't because my dad or my brother or I saw him smoke my whole life. I don't want to be like
There are people like that, but there are other people who want to smoke, and then the father says don't, but the father's contradicting himself.
Right.
All these things, it comes to other places as well, where a father tells his kids, I think you should go to the Beis Medrash and learn now. Dad, how come you're not going to the Beis Medrash? Okay, the kid maybe is disrespectful for the act, but the father should at least explain. He says, I wasn't in yeshiva, I didn't have the opportunity, I'm too tired because I work, because I'm supporting you, and so on and so forth. But when you are contradicting yourself, you have to explain that to a kid. That's why Yakov is saying, I'm asking you to bury her in Eretz Canaan, to go schlep my body all the way to Eretz Canaan, which is a long trip. And Yosef's wondering, oh, really? No kidding. And a few more 100 meters, you couldn't bury my mother in a decent place and bury her off the side of the road? And you can't blame Yosef, and Yaakov knows he's thinking that. So he says to Yosef, that was because it was a God's command. Okay. Take a look now at Pasuk in Pasuk Ches. Vayar Yisrael es b'nei Yosef. Yaakov Avinu sees the sons of Yosef. Vayomer mi ele. Who are they? What do you mean, who are they? He knows who they are. Right? Who are they? So Yosef, the Mefarshim say Yaakov was saying, listen, Yosef, you were alone in Mitzrayim. I don't know, you produce children, these are children born out of wedlock. Vayomer Yosef Elaviv, Bonai Haim Asher Nosan Li Elokim. They are my children, legitimate children Hashem has given to me. And it says that Yosef pulled out a ksuba. He showed Yakov Avinu that he had written a ksuba, and he got married with a ksuba and a kedushin, and it's all kosher v'yosher. Vayomer, so Yakov says, Kochem na'elai v'avrachem. Take them to me and I will bless them. And we've seen in the Torah before that blessings are a big deal. Blessings, brachas are a big deal. Ve'ene Yisrael kavdu bizoken. Yaakov's eyes were heavy from old age. Lo yuchal liros, he couldn't see. Vayagesh osam elav, so Yosef brings them closer. Vayishak lahem vayichablegem, he kisses them and he hugs them. So, I heard from Shalom Garfunkel, he said like this, what's the Torah teach you? First, Yaakov, they take the grandchildren, and he kisses them and he hugs them. So I heard it's also an interesting take in life, and it's very, very true. You know, they used to talk about the generation gap. The generation gap. Well, the generation gap is a major gap between grandparents and grandchildren. Half the time, parents don't understand the mishigas of their kid. Your parents from the older, especially if they came from a different culture. You know, people in my generation look at people in your generation and we wonder about certain things you do. For example, the willingness to pay money, extra money, because somebody put an alligator on your shirt. I don't know what's so enchanting about alligators, number one, and why you would be willing to pay extra money for a perfectly good shirt just because somebody decided that it's a better shirt because it's got an alligator on it. You seem to have some edge on me because you understand these things. I don't understand it. I don't understand people bungee jumping, right? I assume none of you have ever done that, and none of you ever would do that. That's a poor assumption, I know. But I cannot understand why someone would allow himself to be hooked up to a rubber band and jumped and dropped off of a platform and then go springing around and hoping that it ends. Right? It's like people go on a roller coaster, which I also never did, right? And you get on this ride, you get off the ride, say, it's good to have my feet on solid ground again. Nobody forced you up there. You paid to go on that ride and couldn't wait to get off. So there are certain things that people see that younger people are doing. I don't understand. I just don't understand. And that the guy Mishigas this. There's one thing that you never compromise with the next generation. Yaakov Avinu is blind. Symbolically, he doesn't see them. Again, Yaakov Avinu is only teaching us. Yaakov Avinu, obviously, at his level, he understood everything. We're talking about if you have a grandfather and he sees the grandchildren, and the Mishigas, I don't know what your life is about. I don't understand why you run around, and I don't understand why you behave the way you do. I don't understand anything. One thing you never compromise. But you kiss them and you hug them. The love you never compromise on. Make sure that the kids always understand that. The kids always understand, this is my home. The home should be a warm bird's nest. And no matter what the kids are doing, no matter if they're not cooperating, and I got news for you, when you raise children, they don't always cooperate. And they don't always do what you want them to do. They know what's important to you, that yes, kids always know what's important to the parents. That they know. But they don't always do it. The one thing you will never compromise is you never compromise. The kids have to know that the affection from the parents and the grandparents, that's there. And I know with my grandchildren, I don't do anything other than the grandchildren, other than spoil them rotten. That's my job with the grandchildren. Come into the house, give them candy, over the objections of my daughter, over the objections of my wife. No, it's not good for them. They're going to get wild. That's fine. Hey, come here, kids. And give them whatever. As long as it's green, as long as it's got a lot of sugar and food coloring, that's for them. And that's what Zadie does. And then when they get wild, I tell my daughter to take care of them because they're out of control. But there should never be that the kid doesn't know from his parents or his grandparents that the love and affection is there. That's what the Torah is teaching us. Now starts the drama. Vayomer Yisrael el Yosef. Yakov says to Yosef, 2 lines from the bottom. Re'efa necha lo filolti. He probably translates, imagined it. I dared not accept the thought that I would see your face. Well, we would say, I never imagined I'd see you alive. Hashem is showing me your offspring. Wow, I never even thought I'd see you. Now, I want you to look at that word filalti very carefully. Filalti means I never allowed the thoughts to enter my mind. Palel means to penetrate. What's the root of that word? We do it all the time. What's that?
Hitpalel?
He'd palel, tefillah. Okay, now there's a very big question people have. When you daven, most of davening, if you ever look Psuke is there when we talk about how wonderful God is, how great God is, how terrific God is, and there are many cynical people in the world say, what do I need to daven just to feed God's ego? That's the people that want to daven. And the answer is we're not feeding God's ego because it doesn't have an ego. So why are we doing it? Why do we keep talking about the miracles and we have to thank God for this and He's wonderful there, wonderful this, wonderful that? What are we doing when we're doing that?
How can our own ego?
We are penetrating ourselves with the realization of what God is so that we can serve God and get closer. The entire, what we're chanting and talking about God's attributes and God's merciful and God's great and God did miracles is not to feed God's ego as the silly cynics will say. What we're doing is we are penetrating ourselves. That means tefillah it's a mistake. It's a very big mistake people make. When davening comes from the outside in. We're penetrating ourselves. Not that we're giving something to God. We're taking something from outside and trying to penetrate our own hearts. And by penetrating our own hearts, then we have a greater appreciation of what God is. That makes the connection. So Yaakov says, these thoughts never penetrated my heart. I never even could entertain the thought that I'd see you alive. And now God's even shown me your offspring. God has even shown me your grandchildren. So then Yosef brings them to Yaakov Avinu. In page 272, second line from the top. Vayikach Yosef es shnehem es Ephraim bimino. Yosef takes his two sons. He takes Ephraim in the right hand. Mismol Yisrael. Now, if I'm approaching you from this direction, the thing that's in my right hand is going to be to your left. What's in my left hand is going to be to your right. Yosef takes Ephraim, who's the younger one. He takes him in his right hand, so he should end up in front of Yaakov's left. He takes Menashe, bismolo, miyamin Yisrael. He takes Menashe in his left hand to the right of Yaakov Avinu. So he moves them over because that's how the bracha should come out. Because if I'm Yaakov Avinu, who does the right hand, which is always stronger and always more symbolically stronger, Judah, who should the right hand go on? It should go on?
The firstborn.
On the firstborn. So he loads up the kids in front of Yaakov Avinu. He puts the right hand, he puts Menashe to Yaakov's right, and Ephraim to Yaakov's left. What does Yaakov do? Vayishlach Yisrael es yemino, vayoshes al rosh Ephraim. He puts his right hand on Ephraim's head. V'hu hatzoyer, he's the younger one. Ve'esmolo al rosh Menashe, the left one on Menashe. Sikel es yodov. Now most people translate, he crossed his hands. Ki Menashe ha-bechor, because Menashe was the firstborn. Sikel comes from the word seichel, which is intelligence. He intelligently did this. This was with forethought. And he did it because Menashe is the firstborn. Now there are two questions here. Question number one is, why is he crossing? Why isn't he giving each one the bracha right in front of him? And number two, a bigger question is, if I'd ask you, why did he cross his hands? What did he want to do with his right hand? Did he want to reach Ephraim, or did he want to avoid Menashe? What did he do with his right hand? Why did he put his right hand on Ephraim? Did he want to reach Ephraim or wanted to avoid Menashe? Which one? What? No. He wanted to reach Ephraim. Yet the way the Torah says it, he crossed his hands because Menashe was the firstborn. It sounds like because he was the firstborn, he doesn't want to put his hand on his head. You hear? You hear the problem? Okay, so we have two questions. We'll answer it next time to Hashem.